So the first principle is the paradox principle of sacrifice. The paradox principle. In Colorado, where I grew up, we are world famous for the Rocky Mountains. And to the western part of the state, we have the Great Rocky Mountains. What a lot of people don't realize about Colorado is that as a state, the state is divided almost exactly in half. And to the eastern part of the state are the Great Kansas Plains. Because of that unique topographical landscape, Colorado is actually one of the only places in the world that has both buffalo and cows in such close proximity to one another. And there is a fabulous lesson for leaders to learn from studying the way that these two creatures respond to storms. When storms come, storms almost always brew from the west, and then what happens is they roll out towards the east. And what cows do is very natural. A cow can sense that a storm is coming from this direction, and so cows will try to run east to try to run away from the storm. The only problem with that is that if you know anything about cows, you know they're not real fast. So as the cows run east, the storm catches up with them rather quickly. Well, without knowing any better, the cows continue to try to run east, but instead of outrunning the storm, they actually end up running with the storm, maximizing the amount of pain and time and frustration they experience from that storm. Isn't that stupid? Humans do the exact same thing all the time. We spend so much of our lives constantly trying to avoid the inevitable challenges that come along with the difficult circumstances that are the result of what our very own choices have led us to be in. I can speak from personal experience here that people who are in debt constantly try to find ways around paying their bills. People who are unhealthy are always making rationalizations for why it doesn't matter or how they've tried and it hasn't worked, so why bother? People who are struggling in their marriage often avoid the difficult but meaningful conversations that need to be had to reconcile that relationship. Would you believe that a salesperson chooses the profession of selling, understanding that the way to grow the business is to actually go out and talk to people, and then what happens is they make a career out of doing every single thing they can to do other than the one thing they need to do, which is making a sales call. And the key insight that the ultra performers had made that not yet necessarily the rest of us have is ultra performers realize problems that are procrastinated on are only amplified. Problems procrastinated on are only amplified. Waiting always makes it worse. What buffalo do is very unique for the animal kingdom. Buffalo wait for the storm to cross right over the crest of the peak of the mountaintop. And as the storm rolls over the ridge, buffalo turn and then they charge directly into the storm. And they run at the storm, and by running at the storm, they run straight through it, minimizing the amount of pain and time and frustration they experience from that storm. Notice how it's the exact same storm. It's such a great metaphor for all of us as leaders because all of us are dealing with very similar types of storms. And not even just professionally, but personally, right? We have some health-related issue or some financial struggle. And we don't always get to choose whether or not we have storms. The only choice that we have is how we respond to those storms. Or more specifically here, when we respond to those storms. This buffalo mentality is very representative of the take the stairs mindset of high-performing teams. In fact, the paradox principle of sacrifice, simply stated, is this: easy short-term choices lead to difficult long-term consequences. Meanwhile, difficult short-term choices lead to easy long-term consequences. The great paradox here is what seems like the easy thing to do. Eating whatever we want, saying whatever we want, doing whatever feels good in the short term, that is what creates the more difficult life. And yet the ultra performers have realized that the thing that seems hard, putting in the extra hours, doing the extra work, making the calls, whatever it is, doing that work, the things that seem difficult in the short term are the things that create the easier life. But unfortunately, there's only a very small percentage of the population that understands it. They are the world's 1%, what we refer to as the ultra performers.